Welcome to the Life Transform podcast. I'm Simcha.
And I'm Sarah, and we are here chatting, sharing real life, real stories,
Deep truths, all about living a life transformed.
It's all about how God impacts our life and how we're changed and how our life becomes a significant impact in the lives of other people.
We're going to be here every week for this season.
So make sure that you subscribe and join the journey. Welcome back. It's season 2 of the Life Transformed podcast. Sarah here, and with me is
Simcha. Coming at ya.
How you doing?
Good.
Me
How
too.
are you?
Well, I'm excited. I'm happy. I love these days where we get to do this stuff together.
I know, it's fun. We do so much together. I mean, there's no actual limit to what we do together.
Speaking of, we've received quite a bit of interest and feedback on some things that we mentioned in the previous season and also on the iAscend platform, which, if you don't know what that is an online journey of transformation that we recommend you check out. It's got teachings, podcasts,
Tracks.
Tours. Everything is virtual. Everything is from the comfort of your PJs and your sofa.
Yes.
But we did speak a little bit about this new community, this grassroots budding community that we're in here.
Yeah.
And people really love to hear what we were doing and how it's going. So we thought we'd give you a quick update before we get into today's topic about what's been going on through this year of COVID.
It's been a bit crazy, hasn't it? Because so many people around the world have found themselves shutting down and stopping and grinding to a halt and moving entirely onto Zoom for a year and, you know, all these things. And we've just had a very different experience, I guess, of COVID. And we've had those seasons. We have had our fair share of Zoom. But I think it's fair to say that somehow God just took this opportunity to do something new and birth something, I guess, which I hate saying that word, but you know, it's appropriate in this instance. But yeah, it was really a season of new things.
Unexpected, I would say.
Completely.
You know, I think we've all found ourselves kind of in this very weird juxtaposition of COVID shutting life down, everything changing for the quote unquote bad. And then at the same time, God's doing this great thing where we find ourselves in the community we've always wanted to be faith-wise, you know, where friendship and family and that culture of community is actually the driving force of what happens, where kids are included, where everything works so differently to how normal church or congregation would work. Yeah. And so we've had a lot of people really interested in what we're doing and how, you know, and so just briefly, I guess, to describe it, we have a community house. It's a house. So there's not like an official big building. There are no rows. There are no pews.
There are sofas.
There are sofas and chairs and comfortable blankets and pillows and stuff. And we meet. There's always food involved.
Always.
And you know, children from age 6 and up are included in everything. So their voice is heard just as much as a 76-year-old voice is heard. And I think we've seen a few things that are important, I guess. Number one, children's spirituality has gone up significantly because they're not kind of in some other room, in some other place. They're valued, important member of the family.
Yeah.
And we are seeing God send new people, new believers into our midst. And I think that's been incredible, this process of discipling, one-on-one, you know, as Jesus, as Yeshua wanted us. He said, you know, he didn't say go out and just, you know,
Convert people.
Share the good news. It wasn't that at all. He said make disciples, which is an ongoing day in, day out, weekly kind of process.
Yeah.
And then I would say the biggest surprise to me, well, first I'm surprised that we're even in this situation, that this is what we're doing. But I think one of the biggest ones is the toll that that the faith of these new people is taking on them, the price they're having to pay for it, and how early on, how soon in their faith journey, big prices are being asked for. So it's really kind of put us into the mode of prayer, a lot of worship and prayer that goes on alongside all this, that undergirds all of this. It's not just, you know, our own ideas or what we want to do, but there's this foundation, kind of exactly like Ascend, this foundation of prayer and worship that kind of, you know, undergirds everything going on.
Yeah, I think it's been very interesting to see how, you know, like I said, lots of communities and congregations around the world have stopped and shut down and closed doors, and at the same time, we not only started a new congregation, quote unquote, because we never intended to do that, but not only that, we also were able to take this building and this house, and it's, you know, it's on our street. It's literally opposite my house. It's totally community. We are all on the same street or within a very, very close proximity to this house. And that price that those people, those new believers are paying, they're able to pay it because we can walk day in, day out together. And I think that's really what has developed here, is this family. It's very open though. We all hang out with people in our neighborhood, our neighbors. Everybody knows what's going on here. There's no secret kind of weirdness about what's happening in that house over there. We're very open. We're constantly in the garden. The windows, the doors, they're all open when we have worship nights. People can see right in. They can hear everything that's happening. We're very open, and blessed that we can be open. But it's just been fascinating to see how every single time, well, not every time, because there were times when the limits that were put on us by Corona the numbers were smaller than what we were, and we did have to close for a few weeks. But the vast majority of the time, the number of us was just less than the restrictions, so that we were actually still able to meet somehow, even if it was a pared back section of us. There's been able to be basically most of the year some sort of expression going on. And it's grown and grown and grown. And
yeah, so it's over doubled probably in the process of this year.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to say that the initial core group that took on the commitment to, you know, rent this community house and set it up really had no idea, you know, and no.
We were so naive.
No, but, you know, we weren't setting out with this great mission, you know. It's things that God has given over time, and just through being submitted, surrendered to whatever he wants to do. And also, I think another important piece of this is that we are outward looking. You know, this is not just about a kumbaya, make everybody feel good inside, but there's a real drive to just be a house of safety, a healthy family for whoever God brings, you know, here.
I think it's one of the things I've seen that the people here in Israel, the culture here, they respond so well to what we're doing because it's totally relatable. There's kids running around outside. I mean, over the summer, all of our kids together, they found some old beaten up, trashed mattress up the road. And you should have seen this. Both of our sons devised this incredible, genius way to move this huge mattress from the top of the road to the community house using skateboards. And there they were, traveling down the road on a mattress on skateboards. And they spent their entire summer doing tricks and scooters and skateboards and jumping and flips, parkour outside the house onto this mattress. And the house was open and people were just in and out and hanging out, and there's stuff going on. And this is a very family orientated community, and it's a very family orientated culture. And so, and food, always food, also very important in the culture. And so we've literally had people walking in off the street and saying, what is going on here? I just saw the kids and it looks so great. What's happening here? And we've ended up having some incredible conversations in times of prayer with complete strangers who just happened to be walking past some crazy children.
I think that this idea of, you know, what is the Church of Acts, and everyone's trying to go back, you know, to this original model and stuff. I really believe that this is probably the closest, you know, that we've come to something like that.
Yeah.
I also think that this model is correct for the future. It sets us up well for what's coming, because Corona is just one wave, right, of the birth pangs. And so we need to be set up in communities that are small, that are close, that can support each other, that can build each other up, and be ready for whatever comes.
Absolutely. I think it's amazing that what started out as just two families that were just good friends living in the same town, to two families living on the same street, to two families plus family of that family taking on a house that became a community. That it's just an it's like nature, isn't it? The family grew, it multiplied, it's just amazing to see all these local Israelis, the young, they're all young. They're so great. They're so great, but they're so young. And we've had more immersions this year, I think, than I've seen in the last 10 years of being here, which is really quite incredible.
You know, it's a good segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is something we've titled Own Your Zone. And the reason is that I think that, you know, relaying back to Corona, and we did a community online event, which is on ISN, about owning your zone. And we thought it would be worth, you know, exploring it a little bit further in the podcast as well, because this year has really challenged people on their concepts of what their power is, what their authority is, what their voice is, and how relevant or not it is. You know, when you're used to going at life in a certain way and then it completely changes, it starts to, you know, maybe undermine your feelings of relevancy or, you know, what you're able to do or not to do. And yet there are always opportunities. And it's a matter of changing our perspective and transforming our life to look at what that is. So I would say the first important thing that we've talked about in the past is understanding our true sphere of influence.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's really interesting because, you know, your sphere of influence, you know, everybody has one. And I think that's a very basic thing to start with, is there are so many people that disqualify themselves before we even talk about it. They don't think they have a sphere of influence. They think that they are just at the mercy of everybody else's influence. And I think that's such a common mistake that people make, is they don't understand the influence that they have, or the power that they can carry. But I think for me, the initial question to kind of assessing that is, what are you doing with what you've been given? And everybody has been given something. Now, over the past year, we've all been given hiddenness and invisibility. Actually, like there's been days and days and days, even on the same street as each other, where we've not seen each other at all. We've not even seen each other leave the house, because we haven't left the house. And that, you know, we can say that we can focus on all the things that have been taken away from us on those days. You know, our ability to go to the supermarket and go to
which became a highlight.
It did. It was a great treat to be able to go outside
and look at stuff on shelves.
Yeah, even though they were mostly empty. But it's still been something we've been given. We've been given time, or we've been given quiet, or we've been given time with kids or family that we haven't had before, or there's so many things. If you flip it and look at it the other way around, and then you see that it's an opportunity for something. And so my question is always, okay, what are you doing with what you've been given? And I don't think anybody can ever expect to have influence without doing something with what they've been given.
That's so good, because I think what it challenges is our places that we admire, or the things we look up to, or the things we think are important. And we think, if I'm not there, if my life doesn't look like that, if I don't have this kind of audience or that kind of audience, then I don't have a sphere of influence, you know. And the first and foremost point is, our life is a witness. Someone is always looking. Your neighbors, your friends, your family.
So true.
There is always someone looking at your life. You know, let's take it basic down to your own family. You know, they know you the best. I remember researching this idea of revival and life transformation. And I remember this one speaker saying this, and I thought this was brilliant. They said, your life has changed. God has transformed your life when the people closest to you think that you're different. You can be different in so many ways. You can portray so many different things, but there's a limit to, a lack of authenticity that comes down to those people who see you day in, day out, 24/7, in the ugliest moments, in the frustrating moments, has God changed you? Have you been transformed, in those places, in those moments, by those people? And so, someone's always watching, your neighbors are always watching, people around you, there's your co-workers, whatever it is, you have a sphere of influence by definition. You may not recognize it. You may not think it's that valuable or important, but I think our point today is it absolutely is.
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing for people to understand, and this can be really hard to get your head around, but there's a reason why you're in the sphere that you're in. And that can be hard to digest when you're desperate to be in somebody else's sphere. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges, is that we can look at other people's, what we view to be their sphere of influence. It may not actually be correct, but what we view to be their sphere of influence, and want it for ourselves. And to not acknowledge our own influence in that place because we'd rather be in theirs. And I think it's a very easy trap to fall into, because we go down this road of, especially when it comes into callings and giftings, and we can assume I have this gift, so I'm called to that, and so is in that spot, so I should be there too. And it can be very confusing. And I think sometimes it's really helpful to just stop, which we've all just been given a year to do, and look at where we're at, and invite God into that place, and ask him, why am I here? And what is it you want from me in this place? Because I'm not in their place right now. Even if I will be, even if I want to be, even if I'm praying to be, I'm not. So why am I here? Why am I in the place I am in? And what do you want from me in that place?
Yeah, I think that knowing the power of your voice in the season that you're in and in the place that God has placed you is a key to fruitfulness. And fruitfulness in your life is what God desires, but it's also very fulfilling and brings so much joy. And so if we spend our time vying after some other place or some other influence, we essentially become barren because we're not there, and we're not designed to be there, or this isn't the season to be there. And so we are robbing ourselves of fruit for this season and fruit for this place. I love how you were saying, you ask yourself, why are you here? And that question, if you stop a minute and you don't view it negatively, but you start to think about, what God could do through you and in you, what is possible, you start to ask God this question: what are you dreaming over my life for this season right now? What are you looking for? God's not going to waste an opportunity to partner with you.
Yeah.
He never wastes an opportunity to partner with somebody on earth. The original mandate given to Adam and Eve was go forth, take dominion, fill the earth. He still has that mandate for us. He still wants us to go forth and to bear fruit. And he is not limited by any limitation of our season or our placement, or the lack of people around. You could be sitting here listening to this podcast and go, I don't get to see anybody. I'm all alone. I have no one. Don't underestimate the power of prayer. Don't underestimate the power of intercession. There is always something that we can do to partner with God to bring about his will on earth. And so that's your influence, in that situation.
So true. But I think it even goes beyond that, because I think when we pine after somebody else's place or long after something else or another, to be somewhere where we're not, what we're not considering is that, if we really believe God is good and he's good, only has good things for us, and his plans for us are to prosper us and not to harm us, we have to consider the fact that maybe we're not in that place we want to be, because he's actually saving us from something that would not be good for us. And I think that is something that's really hard to digest, because we always think we know what's best for us. We always think we know what's best. And God, I don't know if you've ever seen those those like sketch cartoons of like the man walking down the street and he's like, God, where are you? I can't even see you. And what he's not seeing is the mass battle that is going on around him in the unseen over his life. And he's not seeing it with his eyes, but it's still happening. And I think we don't consider the unseen things. And most of what's happening is unseen. And sometimes I have to regularly remind myself, I don't have the full picture. I'm so limited in my understanding because I am human. This is what I've been given to see and understand. But I have to trust that if I am not over there in that place with that influence that I want over there, he's saving me from something. And that is not right for me for now. And when it is right, if it is right, he will position me. And that comes with a massive amount of release and peace. And actually something I've started doing in my sort of daily quiet time is to just keep asking that question. Why am I here? What am I? Where am I? Why?
You are on planet Earth.
I'm on planet. Where am I? Is it floating through space? And actually when you go backwards and backwards and backwards, why am I here? But why? But why? But where? But where? But where? You actually start to really understand some of the original, we spoke about this in the last episode, the original basis of the why. And when you can't find anything else and you can't find your sphere of influence and you can't figure out why it's here and not there, that's often a very useful exercise to go through, is to go back until you get to the original why. God has made me to be this. Why? For that. Whether it is in this place or that place or any other place, that's the reason why you are where you are.
Yeah, I think it's really important to gain that perspective, because it's always about your life being fruitful. It's always about your life impacting and helping other people. And so, if you introspect too much and too far, you could get to this emptiness and despair. And I think the lens that you need to see this through is the lens of my life for other people. Like Jesus laid his life down, on behalf of his friends. This is our example. This is who we're, trying to be like. And therefore it's about the why of how my life, impacts others or helps others or builds other people up. It's like this paraphrase on this known sentence, stop and smell the roses. I would say, stop and understand your influence, because you have it. You have a voice, and you need to understand that there's power to that voice. And because of God in you, the power of the word of God in you is powerful, because the word of God is powerful. And so to the extent that we allow those things to come out and to influence others, and by the way, influence is not, doesn't have to be, shouldn't be, violent and aggressive, but rather influence is really being that place of safety for people, being that place of health for people, living a life that exemplifies, the rulership of God, the kingdom of God in our lives, in our hearts, in our homes, in our family. And when we allow God to change us and transform us, that is our voice, that is our voice for other people.
Yeah. I was just reminded of, the extent of our influence goes even into what you could look at as like the negative space. Like in a painting, the negative space is so important because it highlights the color and the strokes of a brush. And it's the same in music. You need those pauses, you need those rests in order to highlight the notes. And it's the same with influence. It doesn't have to all be loud voices yelling at everybody. It could be that you're in a season of waiting, of quietness, of hiddenness, of the desert. It could be any of these things. And it's so important to realize that even in that season, you can be an influence by people observing your ability to wait, your ability to be quiet, your ability to stop talking. Maybe you need to take a break off your social media. That can also be an influence. It can actually be an encouragement to someone else who maybe has a not a good balance of something in their life. Or it's all about being, the influence that you carry is not just in the words you say and the brands you wear. it can be in that negative space, those reverse things, the quietness, the lack of words, the lack of sound. And I actually think there's a lot, almost more impact in those seasons of, I like to call it active waiting, because you may be waiting for a new season to come for you. You may be waiting for a different sphere to open up for your influence. You may even have heard from God that he is moving you into a new position or a new zone, and you're not there yet. So what do? Do you try and force it, rush it, make it happen? Or do you wait? What do you do while you're waiting? You can't just sit there lazily, just kind of put your feet up, take a margarita and, you know, have a nice holiday. Well, you could, I mean, you could. But what I like to think of as a good strategy is to actually start preparing through the wait and actually investing in the gifts and in the tools that God's given us to be prepared for that new season.
Yeah, that's good. I think that you have to understand, you know, when we're talking about own your zone and knowing the power of your voice and your influence, we're really talking about your mandate. When you know your mandate, it allows you to also know what is not in your mandate.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I always like to say this: when you say yes to something, it means you need to know what you're saying no to. Mm-hmm. Meaning, what is within this sphere, right, of this season, of this placement in my life, and the other things that are not there, they're not there. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to bring into my life things that are not of the Lord, that are maybe my own desires or you know, places where I think I could be doing a great job helping so-and-so do such and such, but that's not what God has for me. And so this idea of kind of owning it, own your zone, own the place, own the sphere, own the influence, allows you also to define what's outside of that.
Yeah.
And it allows you to stop running and spending energy on things that aren't, you know, God's plan for you right now. I remember hearing this speaker, and he said, do you know the difference between a good idea and a God idea? It's 1-0. You know, it's when you go, that's a good idea, let's go. And you didn't check in with God. And you know, you go out there and you're like, oh, you know, that's what that is. And so I have had to learn this. I think my personality likes to be involved in so many things and do things. And I have this kind of, I don't know why I do this, but I fall into this trap repeatedly. So my schedule is kind of full for this immediate, you know, season and next, let's say. And there's somebody asked me for something, I don't know, 6 months out or even a year out, you know, whatever, you know. And I go, sure, absolutely. Because there's nothing going on, you know, a year out from now, right now in my life.
Yeah, and you don't learn this.
By the time I get there, there is so much going on, and I'm just lamenting, and I'm stuck now because I've made a commitment, so I need to follow through. And so being able to pare down to focus will actually make us more effective.
Yeah.
It will make our voice more crystal, more clear in the places that God wants it to be. And I really like that. I'm a firm believer. I'm trying to work on myself. I've really had to own this idea that, you know, we don't have endless resources. We don't have endless amounts of time. We don't have that. So we cannot be spread and spend on so many spheres and so many places and pare it down and not think, oh, well, if I don't do that, you know, that won't lead to whatever. No, I think being focused, being more laser in our approach and in what we say yes to, will allow that mandate over our lives to be manifest.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was just thinking about this word influence and how it's become this, it's basically a career, you know, being an influencer. And, you know, I was thinking about, you know, it's Instagram and influencers. And I'm thinking, you know, what you've just said about being focused. And I can't tell you how annoyed I get when I'm scrolling through all my gorgeous interior accounts and I'm so inspired. And then suddenly someone's trying to sell me toilet cleaner. And I'm like, this doesn't fit. It doesn't go. Like, if you are in a zone and you are selling, beautiful rugs and cushion covers and bedding, and suddenly you're trying to sell toilet cleaner, it doesn't go. It's not in the same area of that you could influence in. And it just got me thinking, actually, it takes away credibility to that person, because they're just grabbing at this point. That anything that will pay me, I will influence people to buy your thing, just give me the money. As opposed to, how does this fit within my brand, for example? And I think it's the same with God, like what you've just said, paring back and focusing in on what is my mandate. If your mandate is X, Y, and Z, then don't take on A, B, and C. And actually what I think happens is, the more spread we get and the more thin we get with putting ourselves into all these different pies, we actually end up undermining the authority that God wants to give us in the zone he's got us in. And because we try and take on other people's zones and other people's spheres, we actually minimize the impact that we could have, and we minimize the authority that we carry in the zone that he wants us to be in.
Yeah, I also think, just referring to the previous episode of this podcast where we were talking about the parable of the talents and the servants who have the talents, I think it is important to say this, and we didn't bring it up in the last episode, but it's good here to really refer to this idea, which is, God's not going to give you more if you're not being faithful with what he's already given you.
So good.
And so we need to be good stewards of our zone, of our influence. So let's say you're a stay-at-home mom. Your zone, your most important field of fruitfulness are your children, and stewarding that well first.
Yeah.
And doing well with what God has given us first, before thinking that we want something else or that we need something else. Always go back to that place. When God has Moses in front of the burning bush. So picture this just for a minute. Go on this journey with me. Moses has grown up in a palace. He's had everything. He was a prince in Egypt. Egypt was the largest empire at the time. So imagine the richest, biggest, most powerful nation in the world today. I don't know which one you think that is, but, just imagine that.
Prince Harry, basically.
Putin. No, never mind. So, you are a prince in that household. So you have access to everything, all the influence, all the power that has been provided to you by your status, by your family, by the people around you, by the place that you've been placed. And, he has to run away because he kills an Egyptian who's beating up an Israelite slave, and he runs into the desert and he finds himself as a shepherd. And when Moses is in front of the burning bush, it's important to note that it says that he was on the backside of the desert. I mean, imagine the desert, right? It's the furthest place away. It's so far from influence and power and riches and fame. So you're in the desert, but now it's not only you're in the desert, you're in the backside of the desert. You're so far remote and removed from anyone or anything. And suddenly Moses sees this burning bush. He goes to it. And by the way, only when he turns to God, God starts to speak to him. Another important piece of the story. And God says to him, I want you to go and set my people free, right? And Moses goes, ha, ha, ha. It's so unfathomable to him. And he basically says, there's no way I can do this. And I love what God says to him. God says to him, Moses, what's in your hand? He looks down and he sees his shepherd's staff. It's this thing that he's always known, that he's always, had with him. But it's what he has right now, and then God breathes his supernatural power on this thing, and it becomes a snake. It becomes, the almond blossom. So when we're looking at the season we're in right now, whichever that is, whatever zone, whatever sphere you have, it's really about what's already in your hand. It's stewarding well what you've already been given and not striving for other things in yourself, in your flesh. And when we do well with what God has given us, he will give us more. And he will open those doors because he's found, a heart he can trust. I think if you look at King David, for example, a lot of the Psalms and a lot of the things that he says, it's it's this relationship that he has with God. It's a two-way street, you know. It's that he trusts in God and that God really trusts in him, you know, and is able to make him this anointed king over Israel. And so here's the question, really, you know, for you today. If you're listening to this and you're wondering about the things that we're saying, I would ask you, what's in your hand?
Yeah.
You know, what do you already have? What are the spheres you're already in? And they could be so small, like, I have a friend who goes on a walk every day with a blind woman in her neighborhood. That's all she does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's her sphere. That's what she's stewarding right now, you know?
Yeah.
And eventually one day this lady came to the Lord. She came to faith. So we don't know, and we cannot, you know, put a price tag on small things, on unseen things. It's really just what's already in place, being a good steward of that thing that will yield that fruitfulness of God in our life.
Yeah, that's really important to acknowledge that this is not about size. It can be something so what we might feel mundane, but actually, like you've just mentioned, this friend, like taking somebody for a walk every day can feel like the smallest, insignificant, mundane thing in the world. But actually, what is on the line is somebody's eternal salvation. And I'm sure
there's no price on that.
There's
right?
no price on that. And I think one of the things that came up when we did this event on the I Ascend platform, one of the questions people did ask quite a lot was, but how do I know what my influence can be? How do I know what my zone is? And I was going to ask you to answer that, but you kind of just did. It's about looking at where are you, why, and what's in your hand. And actually combining the answers of those questions should give you your sphere.
So good.
I think it's such an important topic to cover. I'm really glad that we've taken the time to talk about it. I felt like at the live event we spread the load between our team and we all did a little bit, but there's so much more to say. So I'm glad that we took this time today to talk about it. I think it's something a lot of people question and feel insecure about, and hopefully this can be a bit of an encouragement to people. So yeah.
So if you've got a testimony or a story or something you'd like to share with us, we'd love for you to connect with us through the Ascend website. Go to ascend.org.il. Drop us a note.
Or drop a comment on the podcast.
Also true. Hey, like it, send it to other people, spread the love, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. See you then. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Make sure you're subscribed so that you never miss an episode. And if you have loved this show, please leave us a rating.
Yeah, we'd so appreciate it. And share it with your friends and your family. We are so excited that you have joined the journey.
Thanks for stopping by, guys. Make sure you're subscribed so that you never miss an episode. And if you have loved this show, please leave us a rating.
Yeah, we'd so appreciate it. And share it with your friends and your family. We are so excited that you have joined the journey.